So the new Signal Peak Carbon. This is a bike that has been in the work for a little while. It really started with where we're riding bikes, how we're riding bikes, what trails are. It came to a lot of feedback of racers, of riders. They wanted the really light cross-country bike to take them they wanted to get places faster. But what they were finding is trails are getting rougher, and because we're able to ride further, we're just becoming better riders. They were riding on trails that were a little more technical, and the bike was a little bit undergunned. And so how geometry design is advanced, suspension design is advanced, new carbon layup techniques have advanced. We came up kind of with the idea to build, a little more long travel, a little more forgiving cross-country race bike. And it turns out that this new cross-country race bike, it's coming in as lighter than some of our previous race bikes, but it's also able to take riders further, meaning it can take on rougher trails. And that's a lot of how we did the geometry. We increased the travel on the Signal Peak. We've got 120 millimeters, both front and rear. And that allowed us a little more versatility in what we were able to do with geometry. A couple of other things that have been able to help with that, really just how one-by drivetrains have dominated mountain bikes. By getting rid of the front derailleur, we can do so much more with the rear triangle, get those chainstays shorter for quicker and faster maneuvering, and that's allowed us to do some other things in the head tubes and a few things like that. So that's really how it came about, is really a demand for cross-country style bike that can really take on some of the long travel riding, and it really, where this thing is going to really excel on the racing side, is going to be kind of this marathon style cross-country racing. It's these 50 and 100 mile cross-country races that have all the single track for all the pedaling and all the big climbing, but there's a lot of really rough and technical terrain, jumps and drops and really aggressive rock gardens that sometimes people were even walking these, but now how we're able to design this bike, you can get through these a lot faster. So that was kind of the concept and the idea of why we wanted to build this bike. And so where we basically started with a napkin sketch. We got our team together and we started drawing down, what are the must-haves. We knew we wanted a little slacker head tube angle for more stability at speed and through those rougher terrain. We knew we wanted a steeper seat tube angle for pedaling capabilities on the bike. And then because, we're basically making, bikes with one-by drivetrains only, we were able to get rid of the front derailleur, shorten up the chain stays, and that allows us for better maneuverability as the trail gets rough and makes the bike a little more playful. For those that aren't really racing the bike, but are looking for kind of an all-around, do-everything bike that pedals very, very well. So we wrote down some of those things. The another thing that we wanted to have on the bike was tire versatility and tire choices, because there's such a broad range of riding styles and riding locations. Kind of a different width tire will really change that. Narrower tire for lightweight cross-country racing, to more of the plus and fatter tires for desert riding, for looser riding, for a little more stability and traction. And so that's one of the things that we really designed, and we had to work really, really hard on the Signal Peak, is running that bigger tire size. On this bike, we can run the 27.5 2.8, or we can run 29er up to 2.6. Which is kind of unique about this bike. And we're able to keep the pedaling efficiency, very, very, very good, and also the geometry very stable as we change wheel sizes with our GA link. And that is basically a small token that allows us to adjust the bottom bracket height and some of the geometry, for that pure race machine all the way to that short travel trail bike. So you can really go out and have a lot of fun on it and change out those tire sizes. We knew that we wanted to have a new cable management system. And these are a lot of things that come up, after you ride a bike. It looks really, really awesome on a web page, looks awesome in person, feels good out at a demo. But after you ride the bike for, a month, 2, 3 months, you tend to find little things that annoy you. And one of the things that always gets me is cable rattle. So we designed a new system up on the head tube and how we're routing the cables to hold the cables into the frame so it stops the rattling. It's a new system, it's interchangeable, so as if you get a guy that wants to run his brakes moto style, 2 cables on one side, everything locks in, is totally tight. We're obviously dropper post compatible, and it's all the small little details that really make this bike shine and just really push it up over the top. So as we kind of got the napkin sketch down, then we started to go into suspension design and suspension drawings, and really what did we want the bike to do? Do you want like a really progressive feel? You know, we really wanted to make sure we kept it around the 120 millimeter travel option. And where this was going to be kind of aimed at the cross country race crowd, but also the short travel trail crowd, we put a real emphasis on the pedaling. So we went after iteration after iteration. I think we went through something like 9 or 10 suspension drawings to really make sure that the bike was really dialed in with the anti-squat values, or really the pedaling efficiency is kind of where that plays in. And it's moving pivot points a millimeter a fraction, trying different combinations, different shock lengths, different leverage ratios. And that was to make sure that the bike pedaled extremely well, that you could go race it, but it was also very, very plush and comfortable. So on the downhills, it didn't feel like a 120 travel bike. It felt a lot longer. And that was really, you know, the leverage ratio feel and the progressivity of the suspension design. You know, so those were kind of the priorities, were the pedaling and then kind of the bottomless feel, but we also wanted the braking to be active. And that's, you know, how we combine in with our TetraLink suspension design. Once we ran after those iterations, we wanted to make sure that the geometry was spot on. And so designing around those pivot points, you know, we wanted a slack 68-degree head tube angle for stability through the rough technical sections. The pedaling efficiency, not only with the suspension design, but the seated position of that 75-degree seat tube angle. That allows you to get up on top of the pedals. And then when things get steep, you're not sitting way back over that wheel. It helps keep that front wheel down and just gets the body in a stronger pedaling position. You know, and then we also added in, you know, like I mentioned, the 430 chain stays. That just helps for maneuverability. So once we got to that point, we alloy prototyped the bike, build an alloy bike to really test those, you know, that hypothesis of what we thought the suspension was going to do, what the geometry was going to feel like, and we rode the bike. After we rode the bike, we actually found out we wanted a few little tweaks. So we made a couple small geometry changes, and the bike just felt amazing in alloy. Once we get to that point, we really go into the design phase of what do we want the bike to look like, what are some of the characteristics we want to have inside the frame shaping. You know, a couple of those things, 2 bottles inside the front triangle, which is really, really unique for mountain bikes today. You know, 2 bottles, seat tube, down tube, that really offer that versatility for those that are wanting to get out without a pack, get that weight off your shoulders. We wanted to make sure we had that, so we're designing the tube shaping. Also with the tube shaping, it's the things of what can we do with the shape so we can reduce the amount of material we have to use to get the pedal properties out of the bike. And if you notice on this bike, it's got a really big, beefy seat tube, down tube area. You know, kind of our continual dispersal box technology that we're using in our bikes to really use longer fibers. We also wanted the bike to look good, so you can see a lot of the aesthetic lines kind of in the upper shock length and head tube, top tube area, just so it just looks, you know, aggressive and like a really good looking bike. We had to take all of that in consideration kind of in the draw phase. Once we go there, we have to verify that everything's actually going to fit on the bike. And so we rapid prototype 3D print the entire frame. With this, we can fully assemble the bike. We can put on the cranks, make sure our chain line is accurate, make sure the cable routing is right, make sure all the components fit, make sure, you know, our fork clears, our tires are clearing at bottom out. So you got that seat all the way dropped down on a downhill section, you hit a big compression, your tire's not going to buzz the saddle. We can test all of these things. You know, it really speeds up the process, it saves a lot of costs, and come to find out, we actually found a couple of errors in our design on the 3D printing phase, just with how the cable routing was managed. We wanted to add a little extra clearance, so when we went and added, you know, the rubber chainstay protector, there was more clearance for every crank option, crank boot option. We really wanted this bike to be versatile. And so by doing these steps along the way, we really can make sure that all the bugs are worked out of this bike. So after we 3D print the bike, we go and we open our molds. We have a new molding process that is our long fiber smooth wall system. What this basically allows us to do is to use less material and make a lighter frame. And it really goes up with our mold system that allows us to use longer fiber construction, so we don't have as much overlap in the carbon fiber before it's cured. You know, carbon fiber basically comes in a paper system, and we lay it up around a new mold, and we can lay longer sheets together, which longer fibers are stronger, but we don't have the overlap, so we have less material in the frame. So that's how we were able to achieve that 2,000 gram frame, is because we're able to use less fiber, but it's also a lot stronger. Once we go through the mold system, we test these bikes to a very, very, very high standard. There's an ISO standard of where bikes have to test just for safety standards, but we actually go above and beyond that. We tested 130% of that standard, but we also offer, we also do 4 other tests that are not included in the ISO standard, and that is to make sure that this bike is really the most durable, best riding bike. And that's also how we're able to offer the lifetime warranty, is because of this testing, because of all of this homework that we're doing along the way to make sure this bike is perfect. Once we get all of these details done and ironed out, we prototype the bike. We build a full carbon prototype, and we go through a couple of these to make sure the bike is riding properly. You know, are we getting the right stiffness in the layup design? You know, is the bike flexing where we want it to flex? Is it offering all of those properties? Is our manufacturing process dialed in? You know, did we get the right layup? Did we orient the fibers correctly in the design to make sure that we're getting the right power transfer that we want to, that the bike is riding and compliant how we want it to? We ride the bike hard. We ride it in every configuration that's really possible, with different tires, our GA link in a different position, different component builds, to really make sure it really is the best bike. And after doing all of this homework, then we finally get to start production. As we go through production, we have to think of all the different sizes we're running. So these same steps kind of in the molds and everything like that, we repeat these on all the different frame sizes. So it's not just like, yeah, we hit it on one frame size, we're really hitting on all of them. And once we go to production, we're very, very, very strict on our quality control. We're going through on this new Signal Peak, we're actually soft testing every frame. We're assembling the frames, we're running them through light fatigue testing just to make sure that we didn't miss anything on a layup. Every piece of fiber is there on every single frame, that these things really are perfect. That our bearing tolerances are on, so it really, you're not gonna have that creaking down the road. It is a bike that is gonna last you a lifetime. Once we get the frames done, we actually we work and make sure we really offer, you know, the full bike analytics. You know, we can build the best frame, but if we're putting, you know, terrible components on it, or things that aren't really adding value to the bike that make a whole bike system, you know, it can really make a really, really awesome frame bad. So we spend a lot of time with the component suppliers and suspension suppliers to make sure that shock tuning is perfect with how we want the bike to ride, that we really do offer the best value for an entire bike, and really what, you know, we as riders want to have on the bikes, and the feedback that we're getting from customers, from racers, to really offer the best bikes. You know, and really to top that off with the whole system of the whole story of the Signal Peak of how we're building this, we do offer our 23-point custom setup. And it's something you can find more about at the website. We're really excited about the new Signal Peak. It's been a lot of fun to work on, a lot of fun to build. It's been even more fun to ride. And we're really, really happy to bring it here and get it out to the riders.